All right, next up in our series of iconic saltwater flies is the Clouser Minnow. Um, the world would not be the same without this fly, and as simple as it is, that's one of the cool things about these old flies that have been around a long time is they're just all super simple flies, very easy to tie, but man, do they work! A million variations since the day this fly came out. Um, just a simple bucktail jig, fly rod jig is really what this is, but man, every fish that swims will eat this, literally. What a great fly, and super simple to tie. Um, I just tied the deceiver, and so I've got some size 2 811s out, which is well within the range of this Clouser Minnow that we're about to do. But really, anywhere from a size 8 or a 10, up to a 3/0 is going to be right at home. Just match it to the size of your local bait fish. I'm going to use some Danville 3/0 in white, 3/0 monocord. And I'm going to start this thread just up here behind the eye. And I like to make sure that the hook eye is closed up. And then I'll dress about the front third or so of the hook. And to go all the back to a third of the way. And then about to the middle of that. And at that point, on a size 2, I'm going to use some medium-sized lead eyes. And these lead eyes are double pupil lead eyes. These are painted black with yellow pupils, but of course you could do whatever color you like. There's all sorts of variations available. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie these in about in the middle of that thread base. And what I want to do is make about 8 or 10 turns going one direction across those eyes. And then I'll peel that eye back toward me and go 8 or 10 turns the other direction. And I want to kind of cover that crossbar like that. I'm going to square those up on the hook, and then I'll go back to front, 8 or 10, front to back, 8 or 10. And then I like to go around the base of the eye. These are kind of parachute wraps. So this is between the eyes and the hook shank. And that's going to tighten up those wraps you just did. You can finish off with some figure 8 wraps if that makes you happy. I don't know that that really makes a big difference, but one thing I like to do is just make sure that those are squared up on the hook before I go on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue my thread base back just short of the hook point, I'm going to say. And I do tie these a little bit different than Bob does. Years ago, I got to watch Bob tie his, and Bob's still around at all the fly fishing shows, and reminds me greatly of my dad, so he's one of my favorite people. And he ties his a little bit differently, but I've tied him for years this way, so I'm just going to stick with the method that works for me. I'm going to take a clump of white bucktail, and again, like a deceiver, a clouser should be tied pretty sparsely. It's much more sparsely tied than you probably think, and it's going to use a fair bit less hair than you're inclined to on a fly that's this big. So I'm going to take a clump of white, and I don't want to stack this. I want to leave this ragged. And one of the cool things about a clouser is you could tie this in a huge variety of sizes. Really, for that matter, you could almost do it on the same size hook. You could tie a clouser that's going to be, you're only limited by the length of the bucktail. You can tie a clouser this long, you can tie a clouser this long. You can really vary it up. What I'd like to do is about 2.5 times the shank length. So I'm going to measure that in, about like so. And I'm going to tie the white hair down here behind the eyes. I'm going to make a band of thread to anchor it down. I'll come up not quite right up to the back of the eyes. So I've got that tied in on top of the shank. I'm going to lift those butt ends up. I'm going to bring my thread forward. So my thread is now hanging in front of the eyes. And then I'll catch that and tie that down in front of the eyes so that that bucktail is humped over the barbell. Then I'll lift those butt ends up and trim those out. And just smooth those off a bit. Now I'm going to take some silver flashabou, and again you can vary these pieces, whatever colors, some flash of some sort. It doesn't have to be flashabou, it doesn't have to be silver, but some flash of some sort. And I want it about twice the length of the fly. And what I'll do here is I'm going to fold it around my thread right at the center of its length. And I'll pull it up from the bottom and catch it underneath the hook and wrap back over it. And I can sort of just bring that up, and that'll be right up against the base of the white. Now, if you've got a rotary vise, just flip the fly over. I'm just going to turn mine over in the vise here so we keep our focus point, keep everything level. And probably the most popular version is going to be a chartreuse and white clouser. So that's what I'm going to tie for you here. So I'm going to take a clump of chartreuse bucktail. And same thing, I'm going to kind of pull out anything that's extra long, anything that's extra short, kind of keep this down into a nice sparse little bunch. Like so. And I want to measure that so it's at least as long as the white, if not just a touch longer. And I'll lay that on what is now the top of the hook, the point side of the hook, and I'll catch that with a couple of turns. For clousers, you want a nice hard bucktail. I don't like real wavy stuff, and you don't want something that's too soft. You can see when I tighten that down on the thread, that hair doesn't flare. That's the whole idea of the bucktail. When I get that anchored down good and tight, and then I'll come in and trim those butt ends out. And you can see I can sort of do it at an angle here, so that keeps the shape of the thread head, so it's going to taper down. And then I'll just build my thread head to smooth that off. Cover all those butt ends. I can come in and whip finish. And I always whip finish toward the back of the thread head. You know, you can put a couple in there if that makes you feel a little better. And then a little coat of resin. This is Bone Dry, Solar Bone Dry Plus. Just coat that over the thread there. Even bleed some in between the eyes. And then I'll cook that. And it's not a bad idea. Let me turn this back around here. Not a bad idea to come in with some of that and cover these thread wraps here that you've got exposed on the bottom. Just a light coat. It's really the only place the fly can come apart, so maybe not a bad idea to toughen that up a bit. And that's our finished Clouser Minnow. Obviously, with those lead eyes on top of the hook, it rides hook point up like so. Kind of generic bait fish, kind of jiggy fly. You can do multicolors. It doesn't have to be limited to 2 colors. You could add, extra flash, more flash, different colors of flash. I like the flash to be just a little bit longer than the tail. You can see that's kind of sticking out back there. But that is the, let's see if I can get you a little better view of him here. Move him over just a bit. Yeah, there we go. That is the Clouser Minnow. What a great fly. I don't know where we'd be today without flies like the Clouser and the Deceiver, but we certainly wouldn't be where we are. So that's a fun one, and one you should still have in your box that anybody that's in the know knows how good a Clouser is. So count yourself among them. Thanks for watching. That's Bob Clouser's Clouser Minnow.